Guys, last week was one of the highest scoring weeks I can ever remember in DFS NFL. We had most of the top plays we called out on the show, so we're hoping for the same thing this week, so stay tuned.
Fantasy football, you dealing with the best. Keep it hype, authentic, this ain't nothing like the rest. With the Armchair Fantasy Show podcast, give advice for all the listeners to improve your stats. Yeah, we live on GoingFor2.com. Tuesdays and Fridays, this is what you want. Talking dynasties and daily drafts, and we just getting started, that ain't even the half. Yeah, so go ahead, tell your friends to join. Going for two, cause no one remembers the extra point. Hey, GoingFor2.com, the Armchair Fantasy Show.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to episode 109 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. We're here every Tuesday and Friday night on Facebook Live, Periscope, and YouTube, and syndicated on all major podcast networks and streaming in the GoingFor2 app for iOS and Android. I don't know if you can tell, but my voice is a little raspy. I'm a little bit under the weather. And so is one of my co-hosts, Mr. Gerson and He's actually sicker than I am, I think, tonight. Gerson, how you doing tonight, man?
I blame it on those. I blame it on all those sick calls that I've had the last 4 weeks now.
Yeah,
keep getting sicker and sicker.
Keep getting sicker and sicker, but you keep nailing those sick calls, so that's good though. All right, what was that?
I said last week was crazy, right? I mean, like I scored like a 305, I think, in one tournament, and I didn't amount to shit.
Yeah, I know.
Was like, what the hell?
Insane.
But,
I couldn't believe.
I did go all in on the. I showed it to both of you guys, I think. I went all in on Deshaun Watson and Matt Ryan.
Yep.
In the slant, and I maxed it out, and I went 75 rosters Ryan, 75 rosters Deshaun Watson, and well, it would have been cool if Julio and Hopkins did something.
Yeah, right.
But it was, I had a lot of will forward, so it made me happy. But won some money in that tournament, though, at least.
Nice. All right, the only healthy one of us tonight, Mr. Tim Strobel. How you doing tonight, Tim?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, I feel good compared to y'all, especially. But yeah, I made some good money last week, like you mentioned. Pretty much most, if not all, of the calls we had last week pretty much hit. So it was a good week for me. I'm not too excited about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was looking at the slate today, and I'm like, there really isn't a lot that I like about this slate. It's going to be a tough slate to break down. I know we got 4 teams on a bye, which they aren't even like great fancy teams, but for some reason it just seems like the plays are kind of conjuncted into a very small pool this week.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is that you had New England last night, you have Carolina, Tampa Bay in the London game, then you have Steelers and Chargers on Sunday night, and then Packers and Lions on Monday.
That's right.
So a lot of the teams we tend to look at for fantasy purposes are not on the slate, or they're in really tough matchups. So, yeah, man, it's going to be a consolidated player pool for me this week, I think.
Yep, definitely. All right, let's go ahead and just jump right into the slate then, guys. Let's start off with the quarterbacks here. The quarterbacks, I think, are going to be pretty easy to call out here. Gerson, we'll go to you first. Who is your top-level quarterbacks?
I think my top. I apologize again in advance for all my clear throating, muting you guys might be unmute, and then Jeff is going to tell me, hey, unmute yourself, and yeah. Lamar Jackson, 6,900. His ownership right now is at 13%. That's the second highest on the slate. He has a really good DVOA matchup versus the Cincinnati Bengals at 31st overall. I'm projected for almost 29 points, but I haven't projected for 25 points, and his biggest implied total is 29. And one of the best thing about Lamar is that usually when you think implied total, you think like, hey, is this a passing game or a running game? Like what's going to be more effective? But like with Lamar, you see 29 points. That's a big amount of total points. So you're thinking, wow, he can do some rushing damage. I've seen Tim play football. He can probably tackle better than Cincinnati Bengals. This team, no offense, Tim, you're pretty good, man. I mean, the Bengals are awful, man. Like, they can't tackle worth shit. They can't stay at home or read assignment. They just look sloppy. It sounds funny to say this, but Vontae Burfict was a very big part of their defense, obviously.
Yeah.
And, like, they lost a lot of defensive players, and some are getting old and stuff. But I love this Lamar Jackson, and the best part about this is that he's under 7,000. So I mean, 6,900. Yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of Lamar Jackson this week. You can stack him with the likes of Mark Ingram because of a good game script, and then Mark Andrews. I don't know if Marquise Brown's going to play, but he did not practice, so that does kind of hurt his value a little bit. But if he doesn't play, Willie Snead, and I think I mentioned Mark Andrews already, so yeah. But yeah, I like him, and you can stack him back with Tyler Boyd. So I really like Lamar. I'm hoping I get him at lower ownership, though, because if he goes off, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Tim, let's go to you. Who you got for your top quarterbacks?
Yeah, I love that call on Lamar. Just one more thing to note. I always talk about projections that I look at. In terms of value, Lamar Jackson is my second highest value quarterback overall. So, you think, okay, you're going to be paying up for quarterback, it won't get a great value. But like I said, I have him projected right with Patrick Mahomes, who's $600 more. So if you're not going to play Lamar Jackson, I think the next guy I want to look at is going to be Deshaun Watson. Obviously, he won all the money last week. He does have to go on the road this time against Kansas City, but it's the highest total on the board. I expect that he's going to have to throw to be able to keep up. And so if I'm not playing Lamar Jackson and I want to spend up for quarterback, like Gerson mentioned, he's also got great options to stack. We'll talk about some of those later. I think somebody so if I'm not playing Lamar and I want to spend up, I really like Sean Watson.
All right, good stuff. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is always one that you can stack with. He's a stackable quarterback. He's probably the best quarterback out there right now for fantasy purposes. So, I want to mention Mahomes. The only other guy I got, and he's kind of a mid-tier, top-tier guy, but that's Kyler Murray. With that rushing upside, the Falcons are the 30th DVOA versus the pass. So I think he can have one of those games where he has 250 to 300 yards passing, maybe 2 passing touchdowns, and has another close to 100 yards rushing and a touchdown as well. He has that ceiling for him. So I think in this game against the Falcons, Kyler Murray is one of my top plays as well, and there's some good stacking options with him as well. The only other one I want to mention is Russell Wilson. It's kind of hard with Wilson because you never know if it's going to be the right script for him or not, if they're going to run the ball a million times or if he's actually going to be forced to pass. But the fact that they're going to be on the road, I think the Browns can put some decent points up on the Seattle Seahawks defense, forcing them to pass a little bit more. So Russell Wilson can also be another decent stack there at 6.6K on DraftKings. So those are the two that we hadn't talked about yet that I wanted to mention. Gerson, we'll go to you now to enter into our mid-tier quarterbacks. Who you got for your mid-tier?
I want to mention something on Russell Wilson. I expect really low ownership on him with all the other quarterbacks getting the ownership. So I definitely like that call. The other call I want to talk about is Matty Ice, Matt Ryan. I mean, this guy been great this year. I don't know. I mean, we don't care about turnovers if you're scoring touchdown and you're throwing for 300 yards, right? I mean, you can have 3 interceptions if you want. But if you're getting me 330 yards and 3 touchdowns, that's going to outdo that negative part of your game, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So in this game, obviously Arizona Cardinals, we've been doing it all year, targeting quarterbacks against them. Even Kyle Allen, who's not even close to what Matt Ryan is, had a hell of a game versus him. So I can't really see why or how you would want to avoid him. I mean, I think he's one of the top quarterbacks this week. Probably the highest owned quarterback too. He's at 15% versus Arizona. I mean, the matchup is there. Don't get cute with it. Just play him. I mean, Vegas has him at 27 implied total, and the Cardinals 27th DVOA. I really love Matt Ryan this week. And I think this week, my Arizona, last week was Deshaun Watson and what's his name, Matt Ryan. I think this week I'm gonna do. Oh, I don't know yet. Don't. I'm not putting my mouth where my money is, but yeah. But if I were, I'm looking more like Matt Ryan and Kyler Murray's correlation. And Kyler Murray's getting better. Last game he threw for almost 10 yards per pass or something like that.
Yep.
He improved from his freaking horizontal 5.8. Yeah, so he's doing better. So I expect this game to get into a little bit of a shootout.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And Matt Ryan is nice too because the DraftKings has that 300-yard bonus, and he's reached that bonus every week this year. So all 5 weeks that he's played, he's hit that 300-yard bonus. So definitely love you some Matt Ryan as well. Is there anybody in your mid-tier, Tim, you want to talk about?
Yeah, just one more guy. I want to give a shout-out to Randy in the chat because I know he's big on this guy this week, and that is Dak Prescott. It just seems that whenever Dallas is having offensive line issues, they kind of – you think, okay, that they're going to lean more on the run, but they actually tend to lean more on the pass. And I think that's what we're going to see this week again against the Jets. His wide receivers have excellent matchups this week. I think that they're going to lean on Dak again this week. We saw last week everybody was on Zeke and ended up being a Dak and Amari game. I think it's going to be another one again this week. So I will mention that I agree with Gerson. I think that game has an excellent chance of shooting out. And just one stat to put on that is in terms of a situation neutral pace of play, the Cardinals are number 1, the Falcons are number 5. So I expect there to be a lot of plays run in that game. I think that's probably going to be my highest exposure. Pretty much whoever the Falcons and Cardinals play each week, I'm going to be targeting, and this week they play each other, so I'm all over that. But if you're looking for another guy, especially in tournaments, to stack up, I love Dak Prescott this week.
Yeah, good stuff. I like Dak as well. I think y'all took all the mid-tier quarterbacks that I liked. Is there anybody else you wanted to mention, Gerson, before we go to our value quarterbacks?
You guys mentioned Dak and Russell Wilson. We do have to mention Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean,
yeah,
he's a player.
I kind of talked about him already a little bit, not too much, but if you want to have any stats on him.
I just think he's to it. I know this sounds weird, but 7,500, that's a lot for a quarterback that kind of been dealing with injuries last 2 games. He kind of shown that he's not Superman no more. And that offensive line lost 2. He lost his left tackle and his guard, I think.
Yep.
So that offensive line can be hurting a little bit. So that's not good for Patrick Mahomes. But he does get back Tyreek. Excuse me.
Or we think he does at least. It's not official yet, but
no, he's coming back. I have inside information through the forums of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. Yep. Gerson's got a man on the inside for the Chiefs.
I think this is a lot of people are going to be talking about it, but I'm not going to be too much interested on it. Jared Goff at 6,100. People like him. Obviously, he's a home quarterback. He does good at home, but one of the biggest problems right now is that San Francisco 49ers puts a lot of pressure on quarterback. And Jared Goff, I need everybody to know this. Jared Goff is one of the worst quarterbacks, if not the worst quarterback in the NFL when getting pressured.
Yep.
He doesn't let go of the ball fast, and the 49ers can really get after the quarterback, and that could really hurt him a lot. I know a lot of people said Jared Goff, but when you do deeper analysis, you have to look at, adjusted sack rate. You have to think about, is his offensive line going to give him enough time to pass the ball? And the 49ers, we just saw what they did to Baker. I mean, they made him look like a bitch, They planted the flag on him and everything, So I'm not saying Jared Goff is Baker at all because I think Goff is a little better than Baker. But just beware. And Todd Gurley's out, guys. So, he's doubtful, but come on. Doubtful usually means out. So that's going to take a dimension of their game. Or how do you say that? But a part of their game. So that was the only mid-tier guy we didn't mention.
All right, good stuff. So we'll move into the value quarterbacks, and I'll kick off the value quarterbacks with one that Tim brought up last week, and I'm going to bring it up again this week. He's still a value. Mr. Kirk Cousins, of course, finally had a good game last week. He finally found Adam Thielen for a couple touchdowns. Stephon Diggs still hasn't gotten his yet. He's a cheat, but we'll talk about him in a little bit. But Kirk Cousins, he's got a great matchup this week going against Philly. We talked about it last week as well. Philly's great against the run. So I expect them to kind of slow the run game down a little bit. I think Dalvin Cook still has a pretty decent game, but I think the Eagles are one of the top run defenses right now. But they're like the sixth most passing yards per game at 271. The Eagles do. So I think Cousins, you can stack with Thielen will be a popular stack if you want to get a little bit more risky. You can stack him with Stephon Diggs, but I think Cousins this week's another good play at 5.2 on DraftKings. So I love me some Cousins. Tim, we'll go to you for the next value quarterback. Who else you got?
Yeah, I love that Cousins pick. I think I told you the first lineup I made was a Cousins stack, so I'm probably going to have some exposure there. But my favorite value quarterback on the week is going to be Gardner Minshew. I haven't played him yet this year, and obviously he's had some huge games, but I think that this is the week that it kind of sets up well for him. Another team that defends the run well, but it's not so great against the pass, is the New Orleans Saints. So I think this is going to set up as a game where he's going to have to throw the ball. We've already talked about how he's gotten Leonard Fournette more into the passing game out of the backfield, and obviously there's a couple of receivers we're going to talk about later. So I think if you're going to pay down, I think Kirk Cousins is a great option, but if you need a couple $100 more, you can drop down to Gardner Minshew. I actually have him over several quarterbacks that are much higher priced than him, and he was my first look number one value quarterback on the week too. So
nice.
I think he has a really good shot to 4x his value. Give you 20 points on DraftKings. So he was definitely somebody I'm looking at this week.
Yeah, it was crazy is I saw both of you had Minshew on your value quarterback list, and I was kind of like a little bit, I don't know about Minshew, but then the more I looked into it, I was kind of like, okay, I can see this. I can see where it'd be a good stack. It's a cheap stack you can get with either DD or even if you want to go with Chark. So I'm kind of buying more into Minshew now, so good stuff. All right, Gerson, you have anybody else left on your value quarterbacks? I know you had 2 listed. We took those 2 already. You got anybody else you want to talk about?
Case Keenum, not sexy at all. But Harry McLaurin, I wasn't on Case Keenum until there's some news that Xavier Howard is questionable. And if he's out, that defense is not going to be good at all. Not that they were any good before. But Case Keenum, 5,000. This guy have hit 5,000. He hit value 3 weeks in a row until he got hurt. I mean, he was crushing it. He was doing pretty good. And that offense isn't as bad as people think. I mean, once they get, a consistent quarterback there, I mean, they can score. And McLaurin, and Bill Callahan, if you guys don't remember him, I mean, he's not a bad offensive coordinator, and he's not a bad kind of play caller. So overall, he said he's going to run the ball a lot more, keep it more conservative. So I like Case Keenum in this game. Don't go all out on him. Just have him in the GPP lineup, stack him with McLaurin or McLovin.
McLovin.
Yeah, that's the only other cheap quarterback I like. I like Gardner Minshew a lot more. So yeah.
All right. There's only one other guy that I wanted to mention, and this is sort of another tournament play as well. I wouldn't get too into this one. We talked about him a little bit on the other side, Lamar Jackson, but Mr. Andy Dalton at 5.4. People think of that Ravens defense as being a good defense, but there's only 4 teams that have given up more yards than the Ravens have through the past. The Bucks, the Dolphins, the Giants, and the Lions. So the Ravens give up 280 passing yards per game. I think Dalton, if he can get some time, that's the only question with Dalton is if he can get enough time to get it out there. I think the only one you're going to worry about in the secondary is Marlon Humphreys, which I think if they move Boyd into the slot, he'll be able to avoid Marlon Humphreys for most of the game. So I think the Boyd to Dalton stack is a pretty good one. So I think that's someone that's going to be very low owned, obviously, because everyone just kind of assumes that the Ravens are a really good defense, but this year they have not been a very good defense so far this year.
Oh.
All right. Any more quarterbacks before we move into the tight end position, Gerson?
No.
All right. Let's go ahead and move into the tight ends, and Tim will kick it off with you first. Who is your top tier tight ends?
Yeah, I don't want to take them all, so I want to see who y'all got real quick. Okay, actually go to Gerson first this time.
All right, Gerson, let's go to you. Who do you got for your tight ends?
Who are the Cardinals playing? Atlanta. The Lions tight end? Austin Hooper. Is he a good value? Yes. There you go. That's all you need. No, I'm kidding. Austin Hooper, I mean, this guy has turned into a pass-catching tight end quite a bit this year. I mean, he has 9 targets, 11 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets. I mean, that's a lot of targets, Definitely love that. And when we're looking for tight end, we look for targets, we look for volume, and red zone upside, right? So, I mean, overall, he has 2 touchdowns in week 3 against Indianapolis. I think the upside is there this week for sure. If not, I think he's going to be my highest owned tight end this week. And the ownership is pointing toward that direction. I don't think I've seen this ownership this high on a tight end this year. Maybe Travis Kelce, but 26%?
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's pretty damn high. And I thought, when I first looked at the slate, I said, George Kittle, oh my gosh, 5,200. And then I saw that Austin Hooper was right there. I'm like, man, I wonder which one's going to be higher owned. But Austin Hooper, man, I'm all in on him. And when I say all in, I mean I'll have a heavier exposure to him than all my other tight ends. I was gonna do my groin. Yeah, you heard it going a little bit. So yeah, but Austin Hooper, I mean, remarkable play this week. Stack him with Matt Ryan, really cheap.
Yep, awesome. And I was going to kind of mention Kittle as well. I think I had him as my one of my top plays until I heard about the groin. So I'm a little bit more worried about him now than I was before. But I still think he's still a top play. I think that the issues that we have, I say we because I'm a 49ers fan if you didn't already know, we have some issues with our left tackle. Joe Staley broke his leg two games ago. Our second year right tackle, Mr. Minch, I can't think of his name, McGlinchey, he's out. So we have a rookie on one side and a 10-year backup veteran on the other side. And then, of course, our fullback, Juszczyk, is out as well. So there's some options there that are sort of missing in the run game. So I think they might be forced to pass a little bit more, which opens up for Kittle as well. The only thing I'm worried about with Kittle is he might be asked to block some as well. If they can't protect Jimmy G with what they got in the offensive line, they may keep Kittle back a little bit more. They do have two other tight ends on the roster that are also blocking tight ends as well, so they might just have them on the field as more. But I would keep an eye on Kittle's injury to make sure that he doesn't, go in there as a limited workload the rest of the week. So yeah, I like Kittle as long as he's healthy. All right, Tim, we'll go to you. Who else you got on your list?
Yeah, so just two guys I want to talk about real quick. Obviously, I love Hooper. I think that's a great play. I'll probably have some exposure to Kittle as well. I don't want to skip over Travis Kelce whenever he's on the slate. I always like to talk about him. I just think that this week, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you're going to need to find value wherever you can find it. So if you wanted to do some tournament lineups, some GPPs with, say, Mahomes and Kelce, I certainly think you can do that. But I wouldn't want Travis Kelce anywhere near my cash games at 7,000. They're going to have to bring him down a little bit. I think he's still good for, 14, 18 points. But to get that at least 21 points, you need the guy I had was Zach Ertz. Everybody's going to be, as we just mentioned, probably playing Austin Hooper, George Kittle, or a guy we're going to talk about here in a minute. So I think for leverage situations, you can play Zach Ertz. He's somebody else who's averaging, I think 9 targets a game. And one thing about the Minnesota Vikings is they're really good against the run. They're pretty average against wide receivers, but they're bottom 10 against tight ends. So we already know that Carson Wentz checks it down to Zach Ertz as often as he possibly can. Combine that with the fact that they seem to get the ball toward tight ends. I think that you're going to get him a significantly lower ownership than either of those other two guys, even with the injury news on Kittle. So if you're looking for a tournament stack to get some lower, or somebody to bring a Kirk Cousins stack back with on the other side, I think Zach Ertz makes a great option.
Yeah, I love Zach Ertz. I've been pumping up the tight ends that play the Vikings pretty much all year, starting with, I think it was Hooper, I believe, had a big game against them. I think Waller had a big game against them. There's been a couple good tight ends that had some big games against them, so I love that as well. All right, let's go ahead and move into the mid-tier. Gerson, who you got for your mid-tier tight end?
I want to mention that so the matchup for George Kittle has the second best matchup against John Johnson. Zach Ertz has the fourth best matchup against Harrison Smith. And you guys mentioned Mark Andrews already, right?
I think we're about to mention him in a minute here. He's
go for it.
Mark Andrews has the best matchup this week against Sean Williams, per PFF, Pro Football Focus. We've seen what Mark Andrews can offer. I think he's finally starting to get over his little lingering injury. I mean, it takes a little bit, but now it's his shoulder. I think he's fine. Before it used to be his leg, right? Part of his leg, I can't remember. But now it's shoulder. Injuries are just like, bruises, But I think once you get your adrenaline running, you'll be fine. This is the Cincinnati Bengals. They can't cover. They can't stop the run. They can't tackle. They can't do anything. I mean, love Mark Andrews this week. He's 4,800, a little bit cheaper than the other guys. I have him projected for almost 15 points. He's at 19% ownership, so that's kind of interesting. Like, I'm really interested. I think this week, since we only have 10 games on the slate, you're really going to be very limited to what kind of options you want to go with. And the way you're going to win tournament GPP is by being different. If you pick players like the top tight end, that's fine. Tim and I, we talked about it on our Facebook group. Don't be afraid to play the chalk. The chalk can hit. You're going to be there. Last week, if you didn't play the chalk, you lost.
Yes, you did. By a lot.
Yeah. But this week, all these chalk tight ends are sharp for a reason. I think they're all great play. I mean, if you go underneath, there's probably going to be one tight end that's probably going to be like below all these ownership that's going to break out of nowhere. But I don't really have confidence that that the others are not great players. So all these players that we're mentioning, Austin Hooper, Kittle, Andrew, Kelsey, Ertz, they're all great plays. The only other one I want to talk about is Will Disley. He's 4,900 though, guys. I am tempering my expectations on him versus Cleveland. His ownership is a little bit lower. I think he can be one of those contrarian tight ends, at 4,900. So Will Disley at 4,900 is really interesting for me against Cleveland too. But he's at Cleveland. That's what worries me. But he's not one of those tight ends. I mean, he's got 18, 12, but yeah, I like Will Disley. But other than that, those are tight ends I'm looking at. There's one more, but I'll have you guys mention him.
All right. We actually lost Tim. I'm trying to get him back now as we speak. But so I'll kind of go in and talk about my guy here. Actually, you took the only mid-tier guy that I had.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. I just can't see you.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system. Is not available.
Tim, are you
Mailbox
there?
is full and cannot accept any messages at this time. Goodbye.
All right.
All right, you got me? Am I here?
Yeah, I think you are here. I don't know if we still don't have any picture on you, so we're just going to listen to you in audio.
Weird.
It's okay. You can be John Cena. You can't see me.
All right, Tim. So go ahead and give us your tight ends here.
Yeah. So the only other guy I wanted to mention is going to be Gerald Everett. One thing I do want to say, like Gerson said, you want to be different on a slate like this. So I think it is entirely legitimate this week to go two tight ends because I think that there's plenty of tight ends that have high floors and good ceiling expectations relative to their price. Now, I probably wouldn't go two tight ends in your cash games, but if you're looking, like you said, to be different in tournaments, if you want to be one of those guys that's going to get a lineup different from everybody else, I don't think that there's going to be a lot of people running two tight ends this week. So you could go with Hooper and Kittle. That's going to be popular. You could go maybe Kittle and Ertz. That'll be less popular. And then if you really want to be different, then you could go somebody like Hooper and Everett. I think that his role has increased relative to his price. He's 3,600 on DraftKings. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to be looking for value this week, and I think he's one way to get it. He'll save you $1,400, $1,500 over those other guys. He obviously doesn't have the role that they do, and San Francisco is a team that has been pretty good against tight ends. But again, as is mentioned, they haven't really played anybody that throws to a tight end regularly. So obviously, I don't think he's going to get the 11 targets that he saw last week, but he got 8 targets the week before. So I think that they're obviously going to be featuring more two tight end sets. And at 3,600, I definitely think he could more than pay off his value. So if you're looking for somebody to get some value this week, if you have a lineup you really like and you need to save some money, I think that he is a legitimate salary saver option this week.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And going back to your point about the Niners being good against tight end but just not playing anybody, these are the teams that they play. They played the Bengals. They had Eifert, who's not really running a whole lot of routes. Steelers, who didn't really use Vance McDonald because it was when they had Mason Rudolph at quarterback. The Browns, of course, Njoku's not in the lineup, so they didn't have him for that game. And then the Bucks, who have O.J. Howard, just don't want to use him. So those are the 4 teams that the Niners have played so far. So not a lot of tight end love there. So I think this game could be a setup pretty well for Everett. I think that quick short pass over the middle is what's going to help Jared Goff kind of beat that pressure. And Everett is an athletic tight end that can get that chunk yardage. So I like that call as well. That's actually the only value tight end that I even had listed. Gerson, do you have anybody else that we haven't talked about?
I don't really want to play him, but I guess actually worth to mention Noah Fant. 29.
Oh, damn. That was my good call.
Oh, son of a gun. Well, get everybody plug your ear.
All right, so we'll skip over that one. We didn't talk about that one at all.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Sorry,
I don't have no other tight end that I want to mention.
All right. I think Tim, is anybody else you want to mention before we take a commercial break?
Nah, go ahead.
All right, we'll be right back, guys. Quick commercial break.
In the unpredictable world of fantasy sports, when all hope seems lost and chaos and confusion rule, one hero will rise. And change everything. GoingFor2.com. Because no one remembers the extra point.
All right, welcome back. We are here talking week 6 for your DFS lineups, and I want to give a quick shout out to Randy in the chat. There is one more tight end that we didn't talk about. Put him down on my list, but I do think he's a good value tight end. That's Delaney Walker. I think he's got a pretty decent matchup for he'd be pretty low on with those guys we've already talked about, so I think he can be a sneaky play. He's had 2 bad weeks in a row, but we know how much Mariota does like him, so I think he can have a breakout week if you need that to save some of that money. So good call as well. All right, Tim, we got you back in all your beautiful glory. So we'll start off with you going to the running back position. Who you got for your top plays?
Hey, I just want to mention Walker has been losing touches to Jonnu Smith the last 2 weeks. So beware of that. He has been losing the usage, so that's the reason why he hasn't done as well as he's done the first 3 weeks. Jonnu Smith has gone in, so I'm just leaving that out there.
All right, good call. I didn't even realize that because he hasn't done much of anything as far as stat-wise, so I didn't even realize he was even playing. Good stuff. All right, Tim, let's go ahead and running back. What you got?
Yeah, well, my first inclination when I looked at the slate this week is that my top running back was going to be Alvin Kamara. Obviously, he's questionable. He was held out of practice. I'm thinking he should be able to go. So obviously, if he can't go, it's obvious don't put him in your lineup. But I do like him. I think this situation sets up good for him. I think that one of the ways you want to attack Jacksonville is on the ground and on short passing game. Obviously, we saw what Christian McCaffrey did to them last week. And I think Teddy Bridgewater on the road is going to have to lean on him a little bit more. But if for whatever reason Kamara doesn't suit up, then I think my top running back this week is going to be Ezekiel Elliott. I mentioned earlier that they tend to lean on Dak a little bit more on the road. But I think that this is a game where whether they lean on Dak or not, Zeke could easily break out. He's been held down the last couple games, but last week I think a big part of it was the game script. I think that, because Dak threw a couple of early interceptions, the Packers got up big, and they haven't been featuring him as much in the passing game this year. But I think that's going to change this week in terms of the game script. I think that the Jets may be able to keep it close, but I don't think they're going to get to the point where they're going to basically take him completely out of the game. And I still think he's got probably a good lock for 20 touches this week. So I think Kamara is my number one, but if he were to sit, I think I would move Zeke in that number one spot.
All right, good stuff. I like that. Gerson, you got a guy on your list that I'm a little bit curious to hear your stats on him, Mr. Dalvin Cooks. That's a tough run defense there. Why do you like Dalvin Cook so much?
Dalvin Cook is, to me now, what I like to call game script proof. Basically, he's a receiving running back as well. One of the things that the Philadelphia Phillies do very well is putting pressure on the quarterback.
The Phillies? Wrong
the
sport.
The Phillies, I like that.
Wait, what?
You said Philadelphia Phillies, wrong sport.
Oh, Philadelphia.
Eagles.
Eagles. And like I told you guys, I'm not feeling very well. Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, Phillies are Cook against the Eagles. They put a lot of pressure. I can see Kirk Cousins getting pressure. That offensive line is still struggling sometimes from time to time. I can see a little dump off screen passes to him. 8,400. I only put him on my list to be contrarian because I don't see his ownership being as high as what it had been in the past. And he's 8,400, which is usually pretty expensive for a running back, right? But I mean, he's still getting the volume. Every game he gets almost 21 touches per game. 21 touches last week, and we already seen him play a hard defense. He played Chicago. They're probably one of the best run defense in the league. He got 35 yards, but he got 8 targets, 6 receptions, 35 yards, and he still got 19 points. I mean, overall, if he would have gotten if he can get a touchdown and probably a little bit more yardage in this game, then I can see him get him at lower ownership. It's more of a contrarian play. Right now he's projected for 11% ownership. So if you get him at 11% and he goes out for 30 points, you're going to be looking pretty good. Because I don't know about you guys, but Zeke and Kamara kind of scare me a little bit.
Yeah.
Overall, the top running back, the top like Kamara, Zeke, and Dalvin Cook, they all have their little one negative aspect of them. What's his name? Kamara could be lingering injury that popped up out of nowhere. Ezekiel Elliott could be that he's not getting the touches he was getting last year. He's not getting reception. Dalvin Cook could be that he has a tough matchup. They all have their little fault, but I think Dalvin Cook has the least of the least faults, I guess. And the other thing that was really interesting, he's projected for almost 25 points on my projection scale.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, okay, maybe I should look into it more.
Definitely. Yep. All right, good stuff. The only other guy that I had that we haven't talked about yet, and he's sort of on that borderline top tier / mid tier, that's Nick Chubb. I had a few stats on them. Of course, the Seattle Seahawks, 16th DVOA versus the runs, which is kind of middle of the pack. But the 2 games that the Browns have won, Nick Chubb has scored a touchdown. The 3 games that they have lost, he has not scored a touchdown. So he's kind of the key to their victory. They need to get the ball to Chubb as much as they possibly can. They did it a lot in the last game against the 49ers. They just got blown out. They had to go away from it a little bit. But I think if they can hang in there at home with the Seattle Seahawks, I think Nick Chubb is a great play at 7.3K. And he has been getting work in the passing game as well, which we kind of expected coming into the season. But he is definitely getting that work. He's gotten a bunch of screenplays that he can definitely take it to the house at any point. We saw what he did against the Baltimore Ravens a couple weeks ago, so I think that he has that ceiling. And I think he also has the floor because he will get most of the touches out of the backfield. So Nick Chubb is a good play for me as well. Anybody else you want to mention before we move on to the mid-tiers, guys?
No.
All right. We'll go to the mid-tiers. Tim, who you got for your mid-tier running backs?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier in the show, and we'll probably continue to mention during the show, this is a week where you're going to have to find value to feel good about your lineup. And I think one of the best ways to find value this week is in the mid-tier at running backs. I think when I first pulled up the slate, the first thing that occurred to me, Gerson just made a great point a minute ago, is that all the top guys kind of have, you're looking at it and you're like, I don't know, he's not really worth that price this week. He's not really worth that price this week. Like I said, to me, the one exception is if Kamara ends up being healthy by Sunday. I think that he's worth that $8,000 price tag. But I'm mostly going to be living in the mid-range on running backs this week. So the first guy that pops up for me and probably popping up for a lot of people this week is going to be Le'Veon Bell. Obviously, we saw last week Aaron Jones was number one. As good a week as Christian McCaffrey had, Aaron Jones had an even better week last week because he put up 4 touchdowns. Now, I'm thinking, obviously, that Le'Veon Bell is going to have 4 touchdowns this week. I think a lot of the Jets players are underpriced because that came out after the slate did. And I think that one of the people on the team that gets the biggest bump from him being back is going to be Le'Veon Bell. Because I think that they're going to be in the game. He is he's used a lot in the passing game, so I anticipate that he's going to get a lot of targets as well as his rushes on the ground. But I think that because of the game script, he's going to have a better rushing floor than he would have if Falk was at quarterback. So I definitely expect him to get, around 20 touches, probably, 15 on the ground, 7 on the in the air. It's about what I'm projecting right now. And as Gerson just mentioned, he is probably one of my highest projected point per dollar running backs this week. So, when the first player I really looked at plugging in my lineup to running back this week was Le'Veon Bell.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think Le'Veon Bell is a great play. I think he might be one of the more popular cash game picks as well, just from the volume that he gets, the fact that Darnold's back in the game, and they did price Le'Veon Bell and another receiver that we'll talk about later on tonight. They priced him based on Luke Falk playing, and I don't think, Luke Falk's not going to play, so it's going to be Sam Darnold there, so I think that bumps their offense up completely, so good stuff there. All right, Gerson, let's go to you. Who you got for your mid-tier running back?
I just want to mention that, Le'Veon Bell is the highest owned running back at 27%, and also he's going to be my highest played running back in my running back exposure pool. When I ran 150 roster, he was pretty much number one in every single different way that I could run it. I mean, that price is unbelievable. You only mentioned Le'Veon Bell. You didn't mention Leonard Fournette, did you?
Nope, go for it.
Okay. Leonard Fournette is probably one of the guys that everybody's like into coming into the year. They're like, oh man, all he does is just run the ball. He never gets catches, never does this. But last game he got targeted 7 times. So finally, we're seeing this break happening, guys. This is the Leno. This is the new come game. I mean, he can catch the ball. He's getting targeted. I give him a lot of credit to Gardner Minshew. I mean, this guy, I think he's a very underrated quarterback. I know I bashed on him the last couple of weeks, but I'm starting to believe in him. Starting to believe in Minshew mania, you know? 26 points last game, 29 points the game before that. He's getting so much volume, and when we look at volume, we want production, and he's doing it. We're looking for a lot of volume for our running backs. That's what we want. 6,700, totally underpriced again. He's my second best value of the week on running back, next to Le'Veon Bell. Actually, no, I lied to you. He's the number 2 next to another cheap play, but I don't know about him. New Orleans is a tough run defense, right? But the thing is, I think with the volume that they give Leonard Fournette, he can overcome that at his price. And that's definitely one of the spots that you're going to save at in the mid-tier. I would not blame anybody for playing 3 mid-tier running back over 1 stud running back, you know. You can do it. I mean, there's not really there was, but I don't know how you feel about it. Tim's probably going to talk about it. There's one running back that's a really big value that opened up today, but Tim kind of convinced me a little bit. But Leonard Fournette for me is the second best value running back that I'm going to have. He's projected for 21 points, so I love him this week.
All right, good stuff. I like those calls as well. And there's only one more guy that I wanted to talk about, and he's the cheapest of all the guys we've talked about so far, and he's actually averaging more touches than a couple of the guys we talked about. He's getting 22 touches a game, both on the ground and in the passing game, and that's Chris Carson. He's become that lead back there. I think Rashad Penny is just a fill-in. He's just a filler. He's not really a threat to Carson at all. Carson at only $6,000, I think, gets that volume. And at that price point, you almost can't avoid him. He's, I think, a great play this week. The Browns, I don't know if I have their DVOA here. Let me see if I've got their DVOA pulled up. I don't, but we saw what the Niners did to him last week. I mean, Niners just gashed him. The first play from line of scrimmage was an 83-yard touchdown run. So I think Carson is a great play this week. So let's go ahead and move into the values. Tim, we'll go to you first.
Can I mention one more mid-tier before we move on?
Absolutely, go ahead.
It was mentioned in the chat. Jim mentioned him in the chat. I want to talk about Mark Ingram because I think he's really interesting this week. As Gerson mentioned earlier, the Cincinnati Bengals can't tackle anybody. In terms of both DVOA, I think, and defense versus position, they're second only to the Dolphins, which are pretty much the worst in every defensive category. So the interesting thing about him is it's a small sample size. They've only played 2 games at home this season. But it seems like on the road they've been leaning on Mark Ingram, and then at home they've been throwing the ball a bit more. But I think, like I said, that's due to sample size, due to the fact that they're playing the Cincinnati Bengals, which are not only, like I said, second worst in terms of DVOA, they also have the Ravens have the 5th best adjusted line yards, something that we've talked about on this show before. They have the 11th best offensive line set up, and the Bengals have the 26th worst, defensive line. So if there was ever a Mark Ingram get 20-plus touches at home week, I think this is it. Another thing we always talk about on the show is we like to play running backs at home that are favored.
Yep.
The Ravens are favored by 12. The line opened at 10.5 and it moved to 12. So it's looking more and more like this is going to be a game where they're going to get ahead and just pound the rock. So you always want the running backs in those situations. So as Gerson mentioned, probably the number 1 most owned, at least as of right now. We'll see how things work with the value we'll mention here in a minute. But as of right now, it looks like Bell is going to be the most high-owned running back. If you want somebody to kind of get a little bit different lineup, I really like Mark Ingram this week, and I don't think he'll be nearly as popular.
All right, good stuff.
Can I mention one guy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I don't feel good about it. I might throw up. But Derrick Henry with the Denver Broncos comes as a very interesting play at 6,100 in that mid-tier. I mean, it's Derrick Henry. I mean, this guy, I saw something on Twitter that all his touchdowns, the gap of the yard of his touchdown, 1 yard. All his touchdowns. And if there's any team that you can run on, to the Denver Broncos, I mean, they lost Bradley Chubb. Is that his name, Bradley Chubb?
Yep.
This is not the same defense. I wouldn't be shocked after this week if we see a whole bunch of trade by the Denver Broncos on a fire sale, you know. Derrick Henry, he can be that one running back that I wouldn't be this week with 2 touchdowns for like 100 yards. I mean, they're going to run the ball. They're going to try to just run it down their throat. They're at Denver. So, overall, that defense, if you keep them off the field, I mean, if you keep that offense off the field, you're pretty much, you know, you don't get tired. You're gonna be tired because what
the altitude, the altitude,
elevation, yeah.
The elevation. You're not gonna want your defense out there too much. So just run the ball, milk the clock, you know. And I can see this game being kind of a lower scoring, but I can still see Derrick Henry getting his way around it.
I like that call a lot, G. That's a good call.
Yeah, I like your call a lot, bud. We're best friends today.
We do have a question from superfan Mr. Damian Porter on Facebook. He wants to know, is Shady McCoy greater than Damian Williams this week, Gerson? What do you think out of those 2 running backs?
Wait, is Shady McCoy better than Damian Williams?
Yes, he had better play than Damian Williams this week.
Yeah, I think Damian Williams finally healthy, and he's gonna. I don't get what everybody loves Shady McCoy about. I mean, like Damian Williams. I know not a lot of people like him, but I think this week is the way you play Damian Williams. They're playing what's their name?
Houston. Yep.
I mean, it's not the best run defense. They're in the middle of the pack, so I think this game is actually going to be more through the air. But as we've seen lately, Patrick Mahomes hasn't been himself, so I'm pretty sure they're going to rely on the run game. I didn't watch the Colts game last week, but from what I saw, Marlon Mack ran on the Chiefs over and over and kept the offense off the field. I wouldn't be shocked if Carlos Hyde's revenge game comes. Did
you just say that? Did you really just say that?
If Houston tries to find a way to, you know, milk the clock and keep Mahomes off the field, but this game can be high scoring. So yeah, I like Damian over LaShawn. Sorry, I didn't mean to carry on with that.
All right,
my only problem with them is I think that they're both overpriced. Like I feel like they're both priced like they're not in a committee.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One's 5,600, one's 5,700. So it's like, okay, is one of them possibly going to hit 20 points? Yeah, sure. Of course, it's possible, but you can't project them for that.
Yeah.
Whereas, like you mentioned, Jeff, you have Chris Carson at 6,000. You have Derrick Henry 6,100. Like if you're picking one of those guys, you're really hoping for a ceiling game and just crossing your fingers because there's really no way you could legit, predict it through any kind of projection system.
Yeah, agreed 100%. All right, there's just one last guy I want to hit before we get to the values. We are going a little long here on running backs. We haven't got to the receivers yet, but that's Devontae Freeman. He's getting a ton of work in the passing game against that Cardinals defense that we know is not very good. They're going to run a ton of plays, so I think that the Freeman kind of lines up pretty well. They're also ranked 22 the run DVOA, so I think he can get some rushing yards in this game as well. He's been struggling so far in the run, but he's getting plenty of targets. It gives him a nice floor, and I think the ceiling in that game is pretty good for him as well. All right, guys, let's do the values. We're getting close to an hour already. We haven't even got to the receivers yet. We talked about a small slate, and then we end up talking about these guys a lot. So, Gerson, we'll go to you first. Give us some of your value running backs.
I'm not gonna mention the one that Tim's probably gonna mention. I'm gonna talk about Adrian Peterson all day. I think this is the game where we're gonna want to jump on the AP train. I know a lot of people are probably logging off and saying this podcast went too long, and they're probably like, "All right, AP, I heard enough." But guys, if there's any game that AP can break out, it's against the Dolphins. This game script could be for him. Positive environment. I mean, there's been a lot of quotes by beat writers that Bill Callahan wants to run the ball. Even AP himself said, I'm excited to see what Bill Callahan has planned for me, for the team, for me. I mean, this guy basically been told that, hey, you're going to get the workload, you're going to get the rock. And if AP comes out and gets 20 touches in this game, I would not be shocked. And he's really, really cheap. So, I mean, overall, it's the Dolphins. 4,500, I think I'd take a shot at him.
Yep, I can see that for sure. That's all the talk right now in Washington, D.C. That's where I live, and they're talking about AP getting the ball a ton. Now, it's It's one thing to say that they want to run the ball. It's another thing to actually be able to do it. But against the Dolphins, they will be able to do it. So I think they can stick with that game plan. Dolphins aren't going to put a lot of points up on the board, so they can stay with AP the whole game. So, yeah, I like that call as well, based on volume alone. All right, Tim, what do you got for your value?
Yeah, I guess you kind of stole my thunder a little bit there, because I was going to say pretty much the same thing. Obviously, with Todd Gurley being doubtful, there's going to be a lot of talk and people shifting over to playing Malcolm Brown. I don't necessarily think that it's a bad play. I just think that it doesn't set up great again the game. I think they're the number one team, or definitely one of the top teams against the run in the league in terms of both DVOA and defense versus position. So if you talk about a backup guy coming in at 4,300, you don't need him to do as much. But if you know that Adrian Peterson is going to get 20 touches against, or so they're talking, they're going to establish the run. You hear Bill Callahan say that, try and set it up for a more conservative game plan. I just think that I'd much rather spend the extra $200 and play Adrian Peterson. So I completely agree with Gerson there. Seems like we have a lot of agreement this week, but that's one of them, man. I mean, I'm not saying don't play Malcolm Brown, have 0% exposure. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying if you're looking for a 4,000 guy that I think is going to more, easily pay off his salary, I'd much rather play even Adrian Peterson, even if he's only going to get me, 3 yards per carry.
Yeah, exactly, with the volume. The only guy I wanted to mention as a value on the other side of that game is going to be Kenyon Drake. I think he gets work in the passing game and the running game. Dolphins will actually be in this game, so they can probably run the ball a little bit more than they normally do. So I think Kenyon Drake's a good play with the PPR upside there, that he's going to get some, and he's a big play guy. He just needs one little break, and he can take it to the house. So I think that he's definitely in play there. And I see on the chat there, someone mentioned Chase Edmonds. Obviously, if DJ is out, which I think he's going to play. Yeah. Last I heard, I think he might play. But if DJ is out, Edmonds becomes pretty much chalk. The only tricky thing is they play at 4 o'clock. So you're not going to really know unless they announce that he's playing. You may have to put somebody else in there, or put Edmonds in there and then just have someone as a pivot get ready, because the 4 o'clock games can kind of screw you up a little bit if he ends up not playing. So I do like that Edmonds call as well. I think he's a pretty good low-priced running back that could be good if he plays.
I do want to thank the NFL for actually making 4 games in the afternoon slate this time instead of just 2 games like they did last week.
Yes.
So we were just talking about Malcolm Brown. If you have Malcolm Brown in there and you want to leave a couple $100 to give yourself the option to pivot up to Chase Edmonds, I think that's one option you could go. So just something to keep in mind. I agree. That's definitely something to monitor moving forward.
Yep. And just going back to those games last week, I didn't realize, until about Sunday, about 11:30, that all the games were, mostly at the 1 o'clock window. I was like making my lineups. I'm like, damn, I have every single 1 o'clock game in my lineups. I was like, why I have no 4 p.m. exposure? And then I looked, I was like, oh, no wonder. It's like there's only 2 games on the damn slate at 4 o'clock. No wonder. But yeah, I do like the fact that there's 4 games this week at 4 o'clock. So good stuff there. All right, we
wanted to make sure that all of America saw the Green Bay Packers beat Dallas again.
Good call. All right, yeah, it was weird watching Red Zone because it was basically just a game. It wasn't even like they were jumping back and forth. It was just watch the game because that's all they really had was 2 games going on. All right, guys.
They switched over like twice, it felt like, during the whole game. They were like, oh, just to let you know, there might be a score in this game. Okay, now back to now.
Yep, exactly. All right, Gerson, let's go to receiver now. Who you got for your top-tier receivers?
Well, we got to go through this real quick, right? So let's go through, excuse me, top wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, we know he's been really bad. Like he's a wide receiver 28 right now in season long. Not that season long matters, but that tells you how bad he is. Has a great matchup this week, Kansas City Chiefs, they, on DVOA, it shows that they're a pretty good pass defense. But in real life, if you look at them, they allow a lot of big plays. I really like DeAndre Hopkins for a bounce back in this game. He's going to be one of the highest owned wide receivers on the slate. Everybody was all over Will Fuller last week, right? I think this week's going to be DeAndre Hopkins' turn. And Will Fuller's actually priced up, so I don't really expect him to be too highly owned, but he'll be owned. But Hopkins, my number 1 wide receiver.
All right, good stuff. What you got for your number 1 receiver, Tim?
Yeah, this is going to hurt me to say because I've played Julio the last 2 weeks and he's burned me. So I actually don't have Julio on my list right now, which means he's going to have 30 points this week.
Yep.
But, yeah, I have Hopkins as my number 1, and then my number 2, I alluded to it a little bit earlier, it's going to be Amari Cooper. I mean, last week we saw pretty much whenever Dak was in a situation where he had to throw the ball, get the ball out, he was throwing it to Amari. I think that we're going to see that again this week against the Jets. He has one of the top wide receiver cornerback matchups on the board. And like I said, I expect Dak to throw the ball quite a bit this week. So I really like Amari Cooper. I do have Hopkins number 1, but I think he makes another great option in that range.
All right, yeah. The only other guy that we haven't talked about that I want to mention is Cooper Kupp. I mean, this guy has just been awesome this whole year. I mean, he's averaging 25.6 fantasy points on DK, which is just a ridiculous amount. He's not priced up like Julio Jones at 8,000 or even Michael Thomas at 7,800. He's only 7,100, which is a great value. I think that Cooper Kupp is the red zone option of choice for Carson Wentz as well. So I think that Cooper Kupp is a great top option as well. All right, let's go ahead and move down to the mid-tiers. Gerson, who you got for your mid-tier?
I think that mid-tier this week is, for me, is DJ Shark. This guy has been pretty damn good, right? Wide receiver, he's priced as wide receiver 24 on DraftKings and wide receiver 15 on FanDuel. So that lets you know that he's not getting any respect, man. I feel like he's got to be like Birdman. Give me some respect, man.
Yeah.
Put some respect on my name, But I love the guy. I mean, he's averaging 21.1 fantasy points per game. That's a pretty crazy, start. But he does have a tough matchup against Marshawn Lattimore. That people make him out to be. And DJ Shark has been beating these tough matchups. I mean, last 3 weeks we've been saying, I think the last 2 weeks we've been saying the same thing.
Yep.
He has a tough matchup. I don't know. But he's proven it. Gardner Minshew and him and his connection is really on top. Like, I watched the red zone and he went on and did a up and left. What do you call that, Tim? You're the one that knows football.
What were you saying?
It was like a 10-yard
out
up route, straight route.
Yeah.
An out route.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't play wide receiver. I played linebacker and defensive end. Okay. But yeah, I love DJ Shark. Volume's going to be there. Matchup might not be sexy, but I think the volume and price is excellent.
Yeah.
Hey, can I just make one comment? Because I had this on the sheet. I do not believe, I know there's been a lot of talk about it in the industry. I do not believe that Marshawn Lattimore will be following DJ Shark this week. I've seen a lot. There's been a couple of matchups this week, and I had a blurb about it, but I can't. Whenever he's against the top wide receiver, he tends to just play on his side. So obviously Shark will see him when he's playing on that side, but last week he played 31% out of the slot. It was the most slot snaps he's played this year. Obviously the majority of the slot snaps will be taken by D.D. Westbrook, who I do think is a good option. But don't be scared of Shark because of the matchup this week. I think that he's going to get probably at least half, if not 2/3 of his snaps away from Marshawn Lattimore, which is more than enough to pay off his price tag. So there's, a lot of people are talking around the industry, pivot, go to DD. And I don't think that DD's a bad play by any means, but he's only $400 different. Obviously they're getting similar routes, similar targets. The only real difference is the touchdown. But I think that there's a reason for that. I think, as Gerson mentioned, Minshew is looking for him when they need to convert a third down, when they get down into the red zone. The first read is usually DJ Shark. So if he has the opportunity and he gets open, I think that's going to be the play. And there's going to be some people like, oh, man, I wish I wouldn't have gotten scared off on that matchup on Sunday. I can already see it coming. So I really like him. He's probably my favorite mid-tier play. The only other guy in the mid-tier I'm really considering, I do want to say that last week I shouted out Calvin Ridley, and he actually ended up being a pretty good play, but because Will Fuller just went right off, you couldn't really say anything about it. You're like, oh, man, he only got me 20 points. Will Fuller had 50. So, obviously it doesn't look as good, but I think that Ridley's another good play this week. He got priced up a little bit, but not as much as Gallup. Not as much as Will Fuller. And then the other guy I was going to mention there, I just kind of alluded to, was Gallup. I think he's kind of priced in a weird spot, so I don't think that he's so much a cash game play. But I already said, if you're going to be doing some Dak stacks in your tournament, then you want to do some with Cooper and some with Michael Gallup. So I think that he makes an interesting tournament for somebody, priced similar to Chark that's not going to have nearly the ownership.
All right, good stuff. The only guys I want to mention, I know I already talked about Adam Thielen a little bit earlier. He's kind of a mid-tier guy that I'm looking at. I think he'll be higher owned. But also Stephon Diggs, I think, also is a good play. He's a lot cheaper. He's only 5.9 on DK. I think Diggs is a tournament play only. I wouldn't play him in your cash lineups, but I think if you stack him with Kirk Cousins, and he has one of those big games. He had one 2 weeks ago where he had over 100 yards. I think he can do that again against his Philadelphia defense. So I think Diggs is a sneaky low-owned option that you can put in there as well. All right, let's go do our values now. We're getting up against the clock here. So Gerson, just give us one of your value receivers.
I'm gonna give you two, and it's just the same concept. Sam Darnold is back. Jamison Crowder and Robbie Anderson are both very lowly priced. I think it's what Tim said. It's more of a Monday night game, or like kind of like a hangover pricing, I guess you can say.
Right.
But I mean, they're both 4,000, same price. But we've seen what both of these guys done with Darnold. So, I mean, if you want to do one of each, don't pair them together unless you're stacking them with Darnold. And if you're stacking with Darnold, you got some balls. But you better start making out with him, man. You're going to get monos. But anyways, Jamison Crowder and Robbie Anderson, both 4,000. They project the top value on my projection chart. Overall, low ownership, too. Either one of those guys can go off. I mean, Robbie Anderson, he's a one-play touchdown guy. We've seen that so many times with Darnold. And Crowder, he's a PPR machine. The first game, he had 17 targets, 14 reception. So either way, I think they'll both come out with good value.
All right, good stuff. Tim, we'll go to you. Who do you got for your value?
Yeah, the only other guy I want to mention in the value is going to be Preston Williams for the Miami Dolphins. Again, this is kind of a matchup play and a volume play. I think he's 4,100. He's 100 more than the guys Gerson just mentioned. He's had pretty consistent value against better teams, which is one of the reasons it's kind of held his price down because he hasn't been as productive. We obviously saw against Dallas he had 12 targets and he dropped a big touchdown, which obviously would have increased his score that week. But if you're looking for a value option, very few values are going to have consistently 6, 7, and then 12 targets over the last 3 weeks. So I think you could do a lot worse than Preston Williams if you're looking for a value.
Yeah, I love that call as well. I think Preston Williams is one of the guys I was looking at. The only one more guy that I wanted to mention, and this is pretty predicated on whether or not Tyreek Hill plays. If Tyreek Hill is out, Byron Pringle, I think, showed last week that he can actually be a decent receiver. Undrafted, he's kind of come in and made a name for himself. He is minimum salary. He's $3.5K on DraftKings. If he ends up being the starter there, I can get some cheap exposure to that game with the highest over-under on the slate. So Pringle would be a good choice if Tyreek Hill is out. If Tyreek Hill is in the game, then forget about it. Don't bother to worry about bringing Pringle in.
What about with Watkins being out?
Yeah, with Watkins being out too. I mean, I think even with Watkins out, if Hill is there, I still don't know if I like Pringle as much. If both Hill and Watkins are out, then I do like Pringle at 3.5K for sure. All right. Anybody else want to mention before we move to the defenses?
No.
All right. Let's go to the defenses first. And Gerson, we're going to go to you. Who's your defense of the week?
Jets! Jets!
Yes, Jets, baby! All year.
You got to sell me on the Jets.
All year we've been paying up for defense, right? Well, I think I finally have an excuse to actually pay down. DraftKings decided to and on a slate like this where just 10-game slate, I can see the Jets being highly owned. They're 13% owned right now on projection. That's pretty high for a defense. They're the number one owned defense. But 1,500, we have seen Dak Prescott turn the ball over. Overall, they're at home. Always a good thing when they're at home. It's just at 1,500, man. All you need is really 5 points.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, and the Jets have done that. I mean, this year they've gotten at home. First Buffalo, they got 18 points. I know it was Josh Allen, but whatever. 18 points. But to give you an idea, I mean, at New England, they got 14 points. That's a pretty good offense, right? I mean, they can score too, but I mean, that's 5 points. I mean, we're talking 1,500 here. If they get you 12 points, they're like at what? I can't do the math, but it got to be like 8 times value.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, and the field agreed with it. So I have them at 3.7 times value right now.
All right. The Jets as his defense this week. Tim, who you got for your defense?
Yeah, I think, like Gerson mentioned, that's probably one of the biggest price discrepancies because obviously it came out before the Darnold news. So the Cowboys are 4,300. I have like zero interest in the Cowboys at 4,300. I think it's going to be nearly impossible for them to pay off that price tag. Okay, normally you'd say, okay, who's playing, Washington? Okay, who's playing the Dolphins? They're playing each other. Okay, I don't think any of those teams are any good. So we kind of alluded to it earlier in the show. I think a really interesting mid-range defense, or I guess it's a little bit of a value this week, is going to be your 49ers at 2,700. I haven't looked at the dog, and I think that they win that game straight up. So usually the defenses in that case are going to be underpriced. They're 2,700. As you mentioned, they have great stack potential. Garrison mentioned that they are, Jared Goff is terrible against teams that get pressure. So I wouldn't be surprised if they get at least a couple sacks, maybe a pick or two, and then hopefully, like we saw in the game last night, they're able to, knock one away and run it back for a touchdown. So I think the Jets are great as a value. I don't know how much high-end potential they have. Like that 14-point game might have been an anomaly, but I think that the 49ers could legitimately have a 10-point, kind of floor going into this game, which is almost a 4x salary. So they're probably one of my favorite defenses, if not my favorite on the week.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I had them listed as one of my values as well. And really, y'all took the defenses that I wanted to talk about the most. I think there's a couple that are okay, like the Skins defense is okay. You can even play the Miami defense against the Skins, believe it or not. Those defenses, I think, are both mid-range prices, aren't too bad. But I wanted to kind of shoot down the whole Cowboys notion that they're going to be a good defense this week because of the Jets. Like you mentioned, it'd be hard to pay off that salary. And I think the Cowboys they've only caused 4 turnovers all year. So they're not a defense that gets a lot of turnovers, and that's what you really look for in DFS is getting turnovers and sacks, and they're just not there. So I am not playing the Cowboys defense in DFS this week for sure.
So I know I put all Jets defense on it, but I do have a defense on my sheet other than the Jets. So the Rams defense, I think they're interesting. With the 49ers losing their offensive tackle and their guard and losing I can't say that guy's name, Juszczyk.
Juszczyk. Justin Juszczyk.
Yo mama. Justin Juszczyk. The Ram defense can provide pressure. I think they can get after Jimmy G. I think we're finally seeing it. Jimmy G, good quarterback. Come on, Jeff. Don't make me show you next week. Next weekend, I'm going to be right next to you. I told you he sucked. See that, though?
I will say that last week he did not impress me. I think he doesn't look like he looked like when he first came to us. He's not very decisive right now. I don't know if it's because the receivers aren't getting open or if it's because honestly I don't know what it is. But when in the beginning of the year or the beginning of his career at 49ers, he was very decisive. He would one read hit him. Now it's like he looks at the reads and he just won't throw it. He won't let it go. So hopefully he can fix that.
Yeah. I mean, I usually don't look at games in the past with defense, but the last 2 games, I don't think it really mattered because Jimmy G wasn't the quarterback, but they did score 16 points and 23 points. So, but the one thing that worried me that tempered my expectations on the Rams defense this week was Aqib Talib going to be out, and when Aqib Talib was out, that defense was horrendous.
Yep.
That cornerback. He might be getting a little bit older, but he can still hang with the best. But 3,300, don't mind that. But I love that 49er call, Tim. I think they're going to be very under-owned, and they can provide a lot of pressure on Goff and get some picks and whatnot. And then people are hating on Richard Sherman. He's still a pretty good cornerback. Like he's still, hey, I can shut you down too. OBJ. Yeah, what's up?
Yeah.
But I like that 49er call for sure. But I think I'm just going to have a lot of Jets.
Hey, I do want to go ahead and mention Randy Tyra in the chat mentioned Tennessee Titans. I had them on my list. I actually think they make an interesting play. I usually don't take teams that are going into Denver for all the reasons we mentioned earlier. But if you look at adjusted sack rate, something that we mention again a lot on this show, they are second only to Carolina, who's not on this slate. So it says they have the 5th best defensive line. The Broncos have the 21st offensive line. that gives them number 2 sack potential. We always talk about sacks or how you get turnovers and turnovers or how you score points in DFS, not really through points. So I actually really like that Titans call. They're a couple $100 more than the 49ers, who I'm going to have a lot of exposure to, and they're almost twice the price of the Jets, which is obviously going to make them lower owned. But I do think that they have a great floor as well. So I actually really like that Titans call. So good call there, Randy.
Yeah, good stuff. And Flacco, we know, is not going to be moving around in the pocket, so he's going to be standing in that one spot, so they can get that sack pretty easily. All right, guys, let's do our stacks.
And now, the stacks of the week.
All right, Gerson, let's go to you first. What is your stack of the week?
As I said at the beginning of the show, Lamar Jackson is my favorite quarterback this week, and it gives me the ability to actually do a really Mark Ingram, who has the second best running back matchup, and then Mark Andrew, who has the best, one of the best tight end matchup, and then running back with Tyler Boyd, which we know Ravens haven't been able to cover any wide receivers this year. So I think that stack can really pay off. It's pretty cheap too, not that expensive. $6,100, I think $6,600 for Ingram, and then I think how much is Andrews, like $4,500?
45,
like
I think, yeah.
$4,800.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, pretty cheap. I think that's gonna be one of my favorite stacks.
All right, good stuff. Tim, what you got for your stack?
Yeah, I think that my favorite stack, I mean, it's hard for me not to go with Dak Amari and bring it back with Bell, but I mentioned it's probably going to be my favorite stack this week, and that's going to be Gardner Minshew, DJ Chark, and then assuming he plays, bringing it Melvin Kamara. If he doesn't, but I like both of those stacks pretty equally. I'll probably have good exposure there, so I think either one's good.
All right, good stuff. I want to apologize, guys. We got some major connection issues this whole show. Hopefully, we are able to get all these plays because it's been pretty bad, worse than normal. But we'll get through it here. So I got 2 stacks. One of them I kind of talked about a little bit earlier with Cousins and Diggs. It's a tournament stack. Bring it back with Ertz, as we talked about. That Vikings defense does not defend the tight end very well, so I think Ertz is the guy you want to bring it back with. And then the other one I want to give is Kyler Murray, and I just wrote Arizona running back, whether it's Chase Edmonds or David Johnson, depending on who plays. And then, of course, Hooper is another good bring it back tight end play. I think that we know how bad the Cardinals are against the tight end, so Hooper's a good play to bring it back. So those are my stacks that I like this week as well. All right, guys, this is going to be a legit sick call. For those of y'all that haven't been with the show forever, I'm going to give you kind of a history of the sick call real quick. So this is about 2 years ago, I think, we were on the show doing the podcast, and Gerson was really sick. I think sicker than he was even tonight. I mean, he was like coughing and snotting into the mic and everything else. It was pretty gross. So at the end of the podcast, we did our defenses, and he came up with the Saints defense, which at the time was one of the worst defenses in the league. It was the year that they first started to break out as a good defense, and me and Tim kind of made fun of him, told him he was just sick. He was on some NyQuil. He was a little drugged up. And, of course, they went out and had a huge game that day. So we named the segment the Sick Call of the Week because of that. So it's just fitting that me and Gerson are both sick today. So we'll go with our Sick Calls of the Week.
And now, the Sick Call of the Week.
All right, Gerson, we'll go to you first. What do you got for your Sick Call this week?
Okay, I know last week I got lucky with Josh Jacob from Feeling It Again. Royce Freeman, man. That guy can play. I'm kidding. Royce Freeman, I like 14 points, which was shocking for me. I was like, I don't know, man. But then I was like, you know what? They could. I mean, this seems like he got a lot of touches last week. He got 16 carries. I mean, if he could have gotten a touchdown, he would have crushed his value. I think this week against the Tennessee Titans, he can get there. Hopefully, it's just you're going to get him a very lowly owned. I mean, right now we have him projected for almost like 2%. So if Royce Freeman can get there at 4,500, I believe he is, yeah, I mean, you'll be sitting pretty good, especially with all those other cheap running backs getting a lot of talk, like Kenyon Drake, AP,
yep,
Chase Edmonds, Malcolm Brown, and if Royce Freeman does what I think he can do in this game, it can be a contrarian play. It can be low owned, and it's going to help you. He's projected actually at 3.2%. My bad.
All right, good stuff. Royce Freeman, a sick call. Tim, you're the only healthy one here, so who's your sick call? Tim?
Yeah, Gerson kind of gave it away earlier, but it's going to be Noah Fant. I think a lot of people were on him last week.
I know what you're talking about.
Cheap option. Yeah, a lot of people were on him last week as a cheap option. This week, with everybody paying up at tight end, I think he will go overlooked. And I actually think that this sets up as one of the best spots for him this year. If you're going to try and throw the ball on the Titans, one of the best ways to do it is to the tight end position. So if you're looking for somebody that's really cheap, that you're looking for, going to get a super low ownership, he obviously doesn't have a super high ceiling, but, he could easily get 4 catches and get a touchdown more than pay off that salary. So sick call of the week is going to be Noah Fant.
All right. I think my sick call is the sickest of the sick calls that we're going to have tonight. I don't even know if anybody's even going to know this guy's name, so it's pretty sick. I had to reach deep on this one. So everyone kind of talked about Kenyon Drake, the Miami Dolphins running back that's going to get some volume. I think he's a good play. The other guy there is Mr. Mark Walton. I think Mr. Mark Walton is taking over that Kellen Ballage role. If you go on Twitter and you Google Kellen Ballage drops, they're going to show a whole montage of Kellen Ballage dropping passes. I mean, he dropped at least 5 or 6 passes this year that just killed Rosen. Mark Walton steps into that role now. If he gets those passes and that little bit of volume that he gets, he could definitely be a good play. I know Gerson is kind of alluding to the fact that we had a Facebook argument about a year and a half ago when Walton was still with the Bengals, and someone went online and said that he was the play of the week, and he didn't even touch the ball that week. It was a pretty terrible call by somebody. He was supposed to be sneaky. So I'm hoping that Mark Walton comes through for me.
We had to argue with him because a lot of people were actually believing him.
Yeah.
And we're like, we are not going to be associated with that on my Facebook group. No, not up in here.
So yeah, a year and a half later, I'm going to bring him up on the podcast and hope that my call. I've been pretty terrible on my calls the past couple of weeks. I think I hit on 1 or 2 of them early in the season, but the last few, I think I had Gesicki. He's now Gesicki to me. I don't even bother looking at him anymore. And then last week I had Dawson Knox, who actually technically did what I said he was going to do. I think he outscored Tyler Eifert, but it wasn't by a lot. So I think it's not really something you want to hang your hat on. But Knox didn't pay off for me either. So Mark Walton, I'm putting all my faith in you this week. So hopefully you can get me more than 1 point like with Dawson Knox did. Waltenberger. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's go around the room and give us your Twitter handles. Tim, let's go to you first. Where can we find you at?
Yeah, you can. We always say you can find us in the DFS Roundtable /FantasyG podcast on Facebook. Hit me up on Twitter at KetoDFS.
All right, Gerson, of course, we can find you as well on the DFS
same thing Tim said. You can find me on that Facebook group. You can find me on that Facebook group. I'm at the Fantasy G Pod on Twitter. All podcast networks, 2 of my podcasts, and just hit us up. We'll be able to talk football with you guys. I usually give out my GPP plays on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. I've been doing it the last 3 weeks, and I have had a lot of good feedback from people messaging me, hey, thank you, I won this much money, or thank you, I was on this play, but you changed my mind. But, yeah, check it out, man.
All right, good stuff. And in case y'all didn't know, next week I'm going to have Gerson and Jason in the studio live. They're actually coming out to D.C. to visit me, so it'll be pretty cool. I don't know how the hell I'm going to fit them in this little ass studio that I got here, but they're going to be here next week. They're going to make me do a pay off a bet. I'm going to have to be singing some Britney Spears next week, so tune in for that. It's definitely going to be interesting. All right, guys.
Be there. Tell your friends.
Definitely, yeah.
No one's ever had, okay?
I'm going to advertise this every day.
The crazy thing is so this bet was like 2 years ago, and the show back then maybe had like 3 live listeners, and like 2 of them were us. And I think now that I'm going to actually pay this bet off, we get like hundreds and hundreds of viewers now. I'm like, shit. Now I got to do this in front of all these people. They're actually going to know.
Yeah.
But before
you have a Twitter following now. They're actually going to see it.
Exactly. It's going to be interesting.
Hey, man. If you would have done the same thing to me.
Yes, I would have. I definitely would have. All right, guys. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. You can find me on GoingFor2.com. You can find me here every Tuesday and Friday night. Peace.
Go Pack, go!
Peace.